and welcome to the How of High Performance. And I'm delighted that today our fantastic guest is none other than Rak Patel, who is Chief Commercial Officer at Channel 4. Rak, welcome.
Hi, Sally. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So just so we understand the context of the great words we're going to share with us shortly, can you give us just a top-line overview of your career and obviously a bit more about what your role involves now at Channel 4?
Yeah, sure. I can give you an abridged short version
Wonderful.
of that. So I've been in the advertising media industry for 26 years. I've always been on the side of commercial, working for media owners and platforms and sales houses. So I started off at EMAP, which then and today we know as Bauer, in magazines, so selling classified ads. And then sort of moved to different organizations, and basically what I sold got a little bit bigger each time. So I moved from EMAP to the Financial Times, started on the newspapers, and then actually went into their first digital team. And then from there went to Microsoft, where actually my management career sort of started over the 7 years I was there. Left Microsoft, went to AutoTrader, where I was the ad director running the advertising business, which sat alongside the classified business. Spent 4 years there, very formative. And I'm sure I'll share a few things from my learnings there. And then went to Spotify, where I went in to run the UK advertising business. And when I left 7 years later, I was running the EMEA ad business, and then joined here at the beginning of January this year. So I've been here now 5 months at Channel 4. And as you said, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer.
Wonderfully done. Great role modelling for future guests when they watch this. So I'm always fascinated, not just by the how of high performance, but I think high performance really comes into its own and is tested when the stakes are high. Because there's a difference between high performance in business as usual and when stakes are demanding and high. So in your own words, and as simple and as straightforward and as human as you can, how do you, Rak, define high stakes, please?
I think high stakes for me very much focuses on a decision and an act in terms of, really being able to make a decision on an approach which comes with it a really high return, and a high return for my team, for my business, but which also carries a lot of risk with it. So, for me, I think there's a whole sort of element that sort of sits around high stakes. And my experience always sort of tells me it always comes down to a moment where you decide whether to go down a particular route or not, with all the things, as I said, around it, the positives and then potentially the risks that are associated with it. Yeah,
I think that's a great insight. High stakes never comes without risk and jeopardy, does it?
Yeah.
Which gives it the thrill, but gives it the fear.
Totally.
It's that balance.
Yeah.
So,
agree.
Looking at that wonderful career you've just shared with us, is there a key high stakes moment from a leadership specifically perspective that you've navigated through, and what was your approach that helped you navigate through a high stakes leadership moment well?
Yeah, sure. I think there's, I would say there's quite a few that really sort of stand out, and what sort of stands out for the ones that are sort of coming straight to the fore of my mind are those where through that I learned a lot about myself, about not just simply the act and where we wanted to get to, but actually how I'd need to sort of adapt my leadership in order for it to sort of progress potentially in the way that it needed to. And those are the ones that sort of stand out quite a bit. I do think that, as you know, and as we've talked about before, I think, there are a lot of decisions when you're running teams or areas and so on, where every day there are high stake, types of decisions you're having to make. But I think, as I said, I think the ones that sort of stand out for me are those where, as we've sort of been moving through that, and I'll go in a little bit deeper here.
Great.
With the conviction, which is always, for me, had to remain in the same place, the learnings along the way to ensure that we get to the right place become the really key thing. I think the one that sort of stands out for me is actually, something which definitely falls into the bracket of a positive, future-facing, future-proofing exercise that we did, and when I was at my last role at Spotify, and we called it the international bet. Now, why I'm going to share this one, and what I mean by sort of in the sort of positive intent, it was at a time where there wasn't a burning platform around us, which meant that we had to make a decision or pivot or anything like that. It was at a time, and actually that's one of my learnings around when do you want to make these types of decisions. Sometimes you are forced into making these decisions. This was a time where we were like, okay, right, we're riding a wave. What's going to get us to what's going to give us the next ride potentially? And what the international bet was in short, doubling the size of the team we had to quite a sizable team, with return coming back to us from that sales team within 3 years. So in effect, we were asking our leadership to give us a check, which was quite a sizable check, and then building out a model which not simply proved, but had lots of constituent parts in terms of when we'd start to sort of return back to the business in terms of obviously sales growth. The bit that I mentioned right at the beginning is the sort of critical component of that, because when I sort of look back on it and I look back at our sort of first model, would I use that first model now, and which I took in to get the decision, to sort of, I'd made the decision, now we need to get the backing. No, I probably wouldn't, because we had so many learnings along the way where we needed to either course correct a little bit, or we recognize that actually some of what we were thinking about wasn't the right sort of approach, and actually we need to double down on other areas. And then as results started to appear in real time, we started to evolve our approach a little bit. What didn't change was the goal. What didn't change was the North Star that we wanted to get to. And I think that, when I think about all of the sort of high stake moments that are in my mind, that's a consistent piece actually, that, the sort of goal isn't changing. It's around, maneuvering to get to it. So yeah, so that one really sort of stands out, and it was successful, which was great.
That always helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And so what do you think it was then that sustained that success in terms of the approach? So you said you pivoted, you made sure you kept agile, you took the lessons as you were going. Anything else you would share around the actual approach of how you led?
Totally.
To get through those high stakes.
Do you know what? I think it was multifaceted actually, in terms of probably all aspects of, leadership experience that all my leadership team had or have, but from my perspective, it involved, on one side, very sort of mechanical and strategic thinking in terms of, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and where we're going to do it and when are we going to do it, to times where I needed to be at the front of the house internally. I'll come to the team in a moment, but I mean to exec team within the organization in terms of getting the buy-in or getting the sort of support or just coming with us on the journey. And to that same point, then there's a team side as well, where it's really important that the team came along with us, because what you're creating there, look, on paper that sounds amazing, you're doubling the size of the team, but also it comes with a lot of cultural challenges as well. You have old team, new team, those sort of things. You really want to sort of not dilute what's got you there already. You want to bring everyone along. You want people to grow, and take the opportunities that are sort of coming along with it. So I think, if I sort of think about that period, what sort of play that back to you, it was all aspects, I would say, in terms of, from people to revenue to operations of leadership that I'd learned over the years, had to come into play. Can I add the opposite of that? What did I learn new over that period? If you might have been jumping straight to that question, probably because you're ace.
Yes, I was.
What I learned was that stakeholder management. Wow, that is key in high stakes decision making and the leadership side. And what I mean by that is, I couldn't be on my own in terms of taking the business to where we wanted it to get to. So I sort of touched on, firstly, the team. The team needs to sort of believe the vision of where we're going, why we're going there, and what comes with it. Because you don't just get to double the size of the team without an expectation sitting over the top. So what you don't want is people in the team to go, oh God, well, that's his decision. And no, they've got to feel inspired about the journey we're sort of going on. So that stakeholder group was really important. And then clearly my peer set and execs that I report into, and ensuring that they recognize where they can help and support. But there'll come times where it might get a little bit hairy. It wasn't like meteoric growth from day one. It took time. And I think, that sort of communication, a massively increased impactful communication component happened where it might have not been going as we would have thought it was going to go to sort of start off with. And so it was really important for me to make sure that my peer set were, not only aware, but really helping me. I think that was a key bit in terms of, where they thought they could support us.
And what about you? Because what I'm hearing there is a lot of attention on the team, a lot of attention on the strategy and the actual metrics to set up well, and making sure all stakeholders across all different touch points are looked after. But that buck stops and starts with Rak and your self-management and your self-regulation. So I'm interested also just to ask, how did you make sure you were managing your own self well to therefore engage with everybody else well?
Yeah, sure. So a motivator for me is fear.
Interesting.
Right. And so fear of failure, fear of not getting to where we need to get to, fear of not delivering, and just generally, I think, and you can do a psychoanalysis on me being an only child and all that sort of stuff, which you no doubt have done instantly. And
oh yes, my brain's like.
And what I've sort of found is, in the right doses, that is important for me because it holds me accountable to myself in terms of where I need to get to. What I've learned over the years is because, like I said, in small doses, if it's too heavy doses, it can be crippling. And so what I've sort of learned is, and actually forced learning, having 4 children, wife of 20 years, the life outside work, being able to sort of, not just simply switch off, but actually have other parts of my life which also are massively important, and I can dip into in a pretty heavy way at those moments where it might be getting a bit sort of too much, and that was important. And I think over the years as well, what I've sort of learned is self-preservation is also massively important. I go for an early morning swim, which again is a really important thing for me to do. I'm regimented, right? So if I'm running late, I'm like because I know how useful it is to me just to sort of level me and keep me sort of I was going to say keep the fear away, but it's less about that. It's more about just knowing if the fear is too much or my any form of sort of component of my leadership needs a little bit of either reining in or I need to sort of tone up.
I guess it's a beautiful way. I mean, we could go to every cheesy analogy there is out there with swimming and leadership and flow, couldn't we? And balance and the whole thing. But it sounds like
a swim lane.
It's literally your way of just having that time with yourself. And I think using the body as well as the mind, as well as emotions is really critical.
Yeah, it was. And the other thing that sort of helped. So what I think the sort of key takeaway is time to myself. It was in this component. So there's times where I need a distraction, which is not actually a distraction because it's the primary thing. And then there's other moments where I just need to have that time to myself, just to sort of either let it all just sink in and not me run through it. Just let it sink in. So that period, as the name suggests, international bets. I was on a plane quite a lot, actually, across Europe, across EMEA. That actually helped me quite a lot as well. Again, it sort of just gave me these times and moments to either get away from it in the mind or think a little bit about it and just sort of, stay in the right place. But that's not saying I got it perfect at all. I mean, there were definitely moments. And that's the other bit as well that, I've sort of learned that you can't hide away from some of these sort of things either. That's the whole point of sort of running through it. So just how do you deal with it? How can I sort of make the right decisions at those moments?
Brilliant. Now, you've just already started to introduce my third question, which is around high stakes moments in life, because I'm always passionate that leaders aren't just these machines, titles, live in a box when they're not in the office. We've got this wonderful life outside of work. So would you be happy to share a key high stakes moment in life that you've navigated through? And again, what approach as a person, as a human, that got you through that high stakes moment in life?
again, there's quite a few. And do you know what? I actually find with a lot of the sort of high stakes moments that, like I said earlier on, that really sort of stick in my mind are where I've had huge learnings, and normally off something that might, at the time was either very painful or difficult or created fear and those sort of things, right? And actually, the life one is very connected to the one I'm going to give you in a second. Is very connected to work as well, actually.
Oh.
So you can tell me later whether it's a cop-out answer or not, but I don't think it is. So 12 years ago, my dad passed away, and at the time I was at Microsoft, and it was coming to the end of my time there actually, and he passed away. He had a short illness, and what it did for me at that time was really made me sort of assess, okay, what's important to me in terms of how I was thinking about my family, how I was thinking about the path ahead, and where I'd sort of got to by that point. Sally, my friends refer to it as Rak 1.0, or maybe pre that. I drank, enjoyed media life. I'd worked at some great organisations. I was in the sort of commercial world, all those sort of things. I'd had 3 children at that point. And when Dad passed away, it was a real moment for me where I was like, okay, well, look, I'm probably not, and I know I wasn't as good a dad as I could be, and I wasn't as good a husband as I could be, and I probably wasn't as good an employee at that point too. So it sort of is a time where I thought, okay, well, something's got to give here a little bit, actually, because I can carry on like this, and I'll be a bit in everything I do, right? Whereas, I don't want to do that. And so at that point, I took a decision to stop drinking, actually. So that was 12 years ago. And I did it so very quietly. It wasn't something I wanted to make a fanfare about. Don't condone drinking at all. I'm told the best days of my life when I was drinking was when I was out and all that. So anyway, and the high stakes it carried were, drinking and being out was part of me. That was my sort of what I'd known for since being 18 and so on, right? and what I was known for, right? But I was purposefully wanting to check in, because what the passing of Dad did for me, and again, it's quite cliched, but and maybe obvious as well, but it made me realise my 3 children are about to have the 4th child. That's what's important. Career-wise, do you know what? Actually, and this is the connection piece as well, I don't need to work at a company which has the highest profile and so on. I actually need to do something that is good for me and family and those sort of things, right? So anyway, a few months later, I went and worked, and that's when I moved to AutoTrader. And what I found there was, and I remember my governor at the time, he was my governor at Microsoft, and he rang me up and he said, come to AutoTrader. And if he'd rang me 6 months earlier, I would have said no, because my ego would have got in the way. I would have gone, oh, it's not Twitter in those days, or Instagram, or whatever. Yeah. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. And do you know what, Sally? Those 4 years out at AutoTrader were the most formative in terms of my leadership journey. I think I mentioned that to you before as well, in terms of being thrown in the deep end, big doses of fear. But because we had to create something new and build something pretty much from scratch there, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have gone through that sort of life moment, which I do think was for me high stakes.
Oh, I think one of the highest. Definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
No,
thank you.
No. Thank you for asking.
Well, I think it's often overlooked that people have stuff that forms them outside of work as leaders, and sometimes that's a plus, and sometimes that can also be a negative, depending on how it's impacted and how they process stuff. So
couldn't agree more, actually. And I think look, one of the things that with work-life balance and the phrase "bring yourself to true self" and all those sort of things. I think look, I think there's some of that is a bit too cliched. Actually, be the person you want to be in those moments that are in front of you. Those sort of things. But anyway, I think that's a different book.
That's the next. Yeah, that's one of the chapters. But I think boundaries and also the permission not to in the current world. To be what you think is right for you. Yeah. So if we look at that incredible leadership journey and all the change in the team and getting there and success, and then gosh, the biggest adjustment ever, losing a parent. What is that combination of experiences you've had and those that you haven't shared just now around high stakes in leadership and in life that you think, right, if you just distill those down into some core lessons
sure,
and kind of nuggets for others, what would you share, please, as your core learnings and lessons?
I'm very happy to do that. Can I share a little anecdote that I had,
Of course.
actually?
Your interview, Rak,
where there was a day, and it was at AutoTrader, and it was one of those days that nothing went right, and every decision was against, I felt, me or the team or the business and those sort of things, and it was an absolute horrible day. And I got home, and so my wife, she used to work in marketing, and now she's working for the NHS, but she spent 15 years at home, obviously having the harder job, which was bringing up our 4 children. And I came home, and we don't normally talk about work, and so this is 13 odd years ago or so, and sat by, we were about to have dinner, went into the kitchen, and I just said, it just all came out in terms of how bad a day I'd had off effing this, and this happened and that happened, and she turned around, she said, F's sake, just do the job that's in front of you. Now, can you go and set the table?
I love that.
And even when I remind her of this, she's like, "Oh, shut up! I don't know what you're talking about." And she got whatever. And she said that, just do the job that's in front of you. And this light bulb just went poof, here, because I think what can be a challenge when you're running through any decision making, and then the sort of act is the what ifs. And what else could happen? What do you need to cater for? What's going to blindside you? What's going to hit you, take you off course? All those sort of things. And some of those things you have to obviously think about. But there's a job that's right in front of you, and that for me has really, really sort of stayed very close to me over these last sort of 12, 13 years or so, because I think there is so much noise. And so that's my first big one, and when and I share that with anyone that asks, actually, so that's the first one. I think the second one then is I sort of alluded to it earlier on, conviction, and go for it. And what I mean by that is, this isn't about throwing yourself into the deep end, which can be a phrase that could be used here. This is more about you are there as a leader to create change, to move that organization to not just simply the next level, but future-proof that business for decades. That's your role in a senior position. And so the killer is inertia. And so if you don't have constant movement and evolution, then of course you can't expect a return that's going to be that either your boss, shareholder, etc. are sort of expecting. So that's the second thing for me, which is constantly, not just through high stakes, but be making decisions, be moving, constantly sort of keep moving in a forward direction. Now, sometimes you can't move forward, you might have to go a bit lateral and so on, but you've just got to keep moving. And do you know what I think I've been blessed with in the organizations I've worked in, that they've had that in their DNA as well. And I think, look, every organization may aspire to it, but I think you've got to have a certain way and DNA amongst the whole organization to sort of do that. So that sort of constant movement, I think, is really, really important. And then the third thing is, what I've also found is don't have the doubts around that sort of, if your instinct is saying you've got to move in that direction, do it. And do it and get it done, right? And because there's always going to be a reason not to do whatever that thing is. And so trust your instinct, move at pace, and then just get it done. There's my 3 things.
Love that. I love how simply you put those, because the simple is the smart in my book.
I'm quite simple, Sally.
So you're in good company, Rak. You're in good company.
no, not in the slightest.
No, I'm great, because I also think, serious point there, I think we overcomplicate leadership to try and make it sound strategic or senior, whereas I'm the opposite of that. It's all about just what's the human way of saying it, because that's going to have a better impact.
Totally agree. And I've been very blessed by either managers I've had or execs that I've had who are very, can very easily bring something down to, very easily make me want to follow them. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right? And and I see that, and I think, wow, right. And they've done that through simplifying so that I can understand it. They've done it so that they've made me go, ooh, if we get there, this is the reward, not just the business will have, but I will have. And that's not remuneration. It can be remuneration, but that's more about
It's one
the
of them.
journey. Totally. So I do look at actually other individuals who've helped me, in terms of sort of mentoring, even when they haven't known they're mentoring me.
They're the best, aren't they?
They're the best. Yeah, they're wicked. Yeah.
So, challenge/opportunity for you now is, if you could just give that one. I mean, you've already given a generous one, but I'm going for another because I'm being greedy. Okay, I'm going to ask the official question. If you could just give that one piece of advice to any other especially senior leaders out there who are also navigating high stakes, especially in today's world, which I think is just so complicated and demanding, despite us wanting to simplify. But I guess also, actually, it is simple at the same time. What would that one piece of cut-through advice, given your own life and leadership experience, that you would say, there's one thing I can only say to the world about navigating high stakes successfully as a senior leader, boom, it's this.
Trust your instincts. I think, look, just as you're asking me that, there's definitely something around conviction. And so that was so let me talk this out, and then you can go, actually, Rak, you can coach me through it, right?
Sure.
So the instinct piece is hugely important. What can happen is that other things come in which delay your decision making, which mean that you don't rip the whole band-aid off. I say that phrase quite a lot, to myself, just rip it off, rip the band-aid off, just go, right? And I think it all ladders into that sort of conviction that your instinct is telling you that's the direction to go in. Does that?
Yeah, I love it. It doesn't need. It is there.
It's there. Good.
It's totally there.
Good.
Rak, you've been so generous. We have covered such a lot in a very short period of time. So
I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Sally. Your questions are amazing. They really are. They're very good.
It's my pleasure. So thank you so much for being on How of High Performance.
Pleasure.